Today we're going to be looking at an article called The Civil Rights Act of 1964, and this is about a time period of American history that's very important for you to understand. Please turn in your packet to page 39. This is going to be the story that we're going to read today. So let's build a little bit of background knowledge first. What is the Civil Rights Act? So an act is something that is passed by Congress. And in 1964, the Civil Rights Act was passed by Congress. It declared that there could not be segregation anymore in public places. And just a reminder that segregation is when you had a black water fountain in bathroom, a white water fountain in bathroom, etc. So there's no more segregation in public places. And you could not be discriminated against in employment based on race, gender, or national origin. So national origin is, of course, where you're from if you're from another country. So the Civil Rights Act protected people of color and people who were immigrants. And just a little bit more about this time period of history. So this was during the time period of John F. Kennedy as the president. And unfortunately, John F. Kennedy was also assassinated before he could get this bill put into place. He was a very big proponent of rights of colored people. And so, unfortunately, he was assassinated. And luckily for him, the vice president stepped up into his place and continued to carry out the works that he wanted. So that president is John F. Kennedy, and this is a picture of him. He proposed the Civil Rights Act, but he was assassinated before he could pass it. And then Lyndon B. Johnson was the vice president under John F. Kennedy, but he became the president when Kennedy was assassinated. And then he kept the Civil Rights Act going and finally got it passed. So he did all of the hard work to finish up all of the legacy of John F. Kennedy, which was nice. Okay, so you're going to turn to page 39 in your packet and follow along as we read the article together, the Civil Rights Act of 1964. During the 1950s, the movement for civil rights in the United States began to escalate. And just so you know, the word escalate means to increase. Just like an escalator, you go up an escalator, it increases your floors. Escalate means to increase. During the 1950s, the movement for civil rights in the United States began to escalate. In 1960, John F. Kennedy was elected president. 2 years after his election, Kennedy proposed a Civil Rights Act. This legislation stated that all people would be granted equal access to public places. This meant African Americans could go into restaurants, theaters, schools, and other places they previously were forbidden to enter. The proposed civil rights legislation would also require employers to give equal opportunities to all people. This meant companies would have to consider every job applicant equally, black, white, male, or female. Finally, the act outlawed unequal voter registration rules. At this time, some states made it difficult for African Americans to vote. Some local governments made special rules. These rules often made it difficult for minorities to prove they were eligible to vote. Under this legislation, these rules would no longer be allowed. In order to enforce these rules, the Civil Rights Act included giving the government the power to punish anyone who violated the act. Businesses or organizations that violated the Civil Rights Act could be made to pay large fines. Kennedy died soon after proposing the Civil Rights Act. His successor, President Lyndon Johnson, worked hard to make sure the Civil Rights Act was passed. This passage became a huge battle for many reasons. Some members of Congress tried to stop the passage by not letting Congress vote on it. However, Johnson's efforts paid off in the end. He gained the support of several leaders in the Senate who agreed with the passage and what it would mean to all the people in the United States. On July 2nd, 1964, the act was finally passed and was signed by Johnson in a special ceremony. Today, this act guarantees the rights of all people regardless of their race or gender. And just something to keep in mind too as you're thinking about this article. The fact that this was passed helped minorities, but eventually it also ended up helping women's rights as well, because it does include that you cannot be discriminated against based on gender as well. Okay, please answer the questions on your own piece of paper on page 39 and 40. And please make sure that you answer in complete sentences for number 5 and number 6, making sure that you include at least 3 complete sentences for full credit.